Hi everyone, and welcome to a video in Atkins-Realis's leadership series on what Canada needs to do to reach net zero targets. About 80% of the world's GDP is tied to one net zero target or another, and we're no different here in Canada. We have a few different targets, including a 2050 net zero target, interim reduction targets for 2030, and a 2035 clean grid target. So in today's video, we're going to be addressing this challenge from the perspective of power and renewables. What does Canada need to do? I'm joined today by Sébastien Mousseau, who's our SVP of Canadian Operations and Capabilities here at Atkins-Realis, and our Global Market Lead for Power and Renewables. Sébastien, thanks very much for joining us.
Hi, Jacob.
So Sébastien, first question right off the top. We hear a lot about this from politicians, from media, but I want to hear a perspective of an engineer. Straight up, is Canada on track to meet its 2030 net zero targets, yes or no?
Yeah, no, I think it's highly unlikely that we're going to meet these targets. To be clear here, from 2005 to 2019, we've managed to reduce emission by 1.1% only. We saw a small decrease in 2020 and 2019 because of the COVID situation, but it's already going up again. If we look at some sectors that are the worst offender in Canada, we talk about transportation, oil and gas, and also the building sectors, where all of these sectors have kind of increased their emissions because of economic growth and population growth, essentially. There is only one sector that really showed a decrease. It's the electricity sector, where, for example, Ontario decided to close their coal plants there. But apart from that, it's not moving the needle. And if we want to cut close to 300 megatons by 2030, we need to take actions right now. We need to start moving. We can't kind of stall like that. We need to make some great action in some specific sectors that are maybe easier to do short term. But overall, we're not going in the right tracks there. We will need to make significant action if you want to achieve kind of that 40 to 45% reduction that we've committed by 2030 in Canada.
So in terms of timing, Sébastien, we know that Canada has a few different targets: 2050 absolute net zero target, interim targets for 2030, and a target for a 2035 clean grid. So what does Canada need to do to actually attain each of these targets in the prescribed time frame?
Yeah, there are some short-term action that we should make. So if we look at these three sectors that I've talked about previously, well, on the electricity sector, we still have provinces that are burning coal every day. Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, and Alberta are still burning coal. So that could lead to a significant reduction of GHG if we decided to retire these plants and replace them with something with renewable power. If we look at specifically at the oil and gas sector, there's a lot of fugitive emissions that could be controlled. And this is things that we can do right now. We can also start to work on carbon capture and sequestration. That would also lead to some reduction there. And then finally, transportation, which is one of the key parts in Canada. We need to electrify everything that we can. Small car, medium car, light trucks. Everything that could electrify could be there. And then when we have some heavy kind of vehicles, well, we could also use hydrogen. That's technology that exists right now. We also need to start planning for ahead of after 2030. There are technologies that will continue to develop, but we also need to take time to do some investment, because building a new nuclear plant, building a new hydro plant takes 10 years. So we have to start doing that right now in order to achieve the 2030, the 2035, and the 2050 kind of milestone that we have.
So Sébastien, when you talk about electrification of society and replacing fossil fuels, EVs obviously are center stage in this. We hear a lot of talk from governments and media and consumers about EVs, and even some targets in terms of when EVs need to be sold. 2035 target for most cars and trucks in Canada, light cars and trucks being EVs. But what actually needs to be done in terms of the charging infrastructure to really ensure that EVs can make an impact in our clean energy targets?
Well, it relates to the grid. And it's not just EVs, it's everything. The grid is so important, and our generation of power is critical here. We need in Canada to triple our electrical generation in order to meet decarbonization. And EV will never happen if we don't invest on the grid, invest also on everything with respect to generation. It's paramount also that we start to coordinate and collaborate between all stakeholders in Canada. Yes, at the end, it's about distribution and getting it close to the customer, but it starts with generation, then transportation, then distribution, and then making sure that the grid and the EV infrastructure is built at the right place. And we've seen a lot of development in Canada right now with respect to EVs. If we look at provinces like BC, Ontario, Quebec, we are progressing well in that, but it's mainly targeted at large cities. What are we doing with remote areas where the return on investment is not there as it is right now in major cities there? What do we do with older apartments? What do we do with all the infrastructure that is already there that is not ready to kind of have high voltage current available for customer or for future EV charging stations? So there's a lot of things that have to be done, and we need to do that in collaboration. We need to have a good system studies in order to make the right decision. And right now we see the private playing a role there, ChargePoint, Flow, all these companies, Electrify Canada, and we need to have a better coordination and alignment within all these stakeholders involved in kind of deploying and creating that EV infrastructure in Canada.
One of the central themes, Sébastien, I've heard in all of your answers today is collaboration, cooperation, working together. So I want to just leave that as the final thought and ask you, why do you keep mentioning this? Just how important is collaboration and cross-industry cooperation in achieving our net zero targets?
Well, it's paramount. We will never achieve anything if we don't collaborate. I'm sorry, but if I put my technical hat on, the optimized solution is not, for example, at a provincial level. It's not 10 different solutions. It's an holistic solution that is the best technical solution. When are we going to start to collaborate between federal, provincial, municipal, but also with communities, with the engineers kind of communities also? When are we going to start to work together? Why are we not doing, for example, a federal or a national system planning here in Canada to achieve the best solutions? No, we're not doing that right now in Canada. Just on the electricity side of things, we're selling more power north-south than we're selling it east-west to our own neighbors. It's not optimum. If we want to achieve net zero by 2050, we're going to need to start to work together. And right now, it's not happening. We're still working in some kind of silos across Canada.
Sébastien, thanks so much again for your time today. Appreciate hearing your thoughts on all of this.
Thank you, Jacob.